That night, I looked at him like I hadn't looked at anyone in 15 years of marriage. My colleague, my husband's friend, and I was the one who reached for his hand first. How do you measure the weight of a mistake against the emptiness that preceded it? The first time James smiled at me across the conference room table, I didn't think anything of it. Tall with thoughtful eyes that crinkled at the corners, he was just another face in the marketing department at Wilson & Burke where I'd worked for 8 years. Ryan, my husband, had even met him at the company Christmas party last December. They talked football while I mingled with the executives' wives, playing the role of the perfect spouse with practiced ease. But that was before the night everything changed. I remember standing in our bedroom, watching Ryan pack for his 3rd business trip that month. 15 years of marriage had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Too comfortable. His movements were methodical as he folded his shirts with the precision I once found endearing but now felt mechanical. "I'll miss you," I said, the words hollow even to my own ears. Ryan glanced up, offering that familiar half-smile that never quite reached his eyes. "It's just 3 days, Grace. You'll barely notice I'm gone." But that was the problem. I would barely notice. Our lives had become parallel lines, existing alongside each other without truly intersecting. We shared a home, a bed, occasionally a conversation about bills or weekend plans. But somewhere along the way, we'd stopped sharing ourselves. That night, after Ryan left, I stood in front of our bathroom mirror, studying my reflection. At 38, I still recognized myself. Honey brown hair, hazel eyes, the small scar above my lip from a childhood fall. But there was something different in my eyes, a question I couldn't articulate. Who am I beyond being Ryan's wife? The question lingered, uncomfortable and persistent, like a stone in my shoe I couldn't dislodge. The marketing project paired me with James for 6 weeks. At first, our conversations were strictly professional: budget allocations, campaign strategies, client feedback. But during late nights at the office, the boundaries began to blur. "You have a way with words," James said one evening as we reviewed my copy for the Henderson account. The conference room was empty except for us, the building quiet around us. "You make ordinary products sound like life-changing discoveries." I laughed, the sound surprising me with its genuineness. "That's literally my job description." "No, it's more than that." His eyes met mine across the table. "You see possibilities others miss." Something shifted in that moment. Subtle yet seismic. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen. Not as Ryan's wife or the senior copywriter, but as Grace, a woman with thoughts and talents that someone found worthy of attention. That night, I drove home with the windows down, my favorite playlist filling the car. I felt awake in a way I hadn't in years. "Dangerous," whispered a voice in my head. I turned the music louder to drown it out. The touch was innocent at first, James's hand brushing mine as we reached for the same document. But the jolt I felt was anything but innocent. Our eyes met for a breathless moment before we both looked away. "Sorry," he murmured, though his expression suggested he wasn't sorry at all. That evening, I found myself lingering over my appearance before heading to our project meeting. The silky blue blouse that brought out my eyes, a touch more perfume than usual. The woman in the mirror looked both familiar and foreign, her eyes brighter, her movements more deliberate. "What are you doing?" I asked my reflection. She didn't answer. "Ryan called that night from his hotel in Phoenix. How's the Henderson project?" His voice was distracted. I could hear his fingers tapping on a keyboard. "It's good." "Intense." I twisted my wedding ring around my finger, a habit I'd developed whenever I felt anxious. "James Mitchell and I are heading the creative team." "James." Ryan paused. "Tall guy, talks about rock climbing?" "That's him. Good guy. Smart." And then he was off, telling me about his meetings, the clients, the same stories with different names that had filled our conversations for years. I let his words wash over me, responding at all the right moments while my mind wandered to the way James had looked at me earlier that day. Like I was a puzzle he was eager to solve. After hanging up, I lay in our bed, staring at the ceiling, the emptiness beside me feeling more profound than usual. Not just Ryan's physical absence, but the absence of connection, of passion, of curiosity. When have we stopped being curious about each other? The rain came suddenly, sheets of water cascading from a sky that had been clear just moments before. James and I ran from the building to the parking garage, laughing as we got soaked in the few seconds it took to reach shelter. "Your hair," he said, reaching out to brush a wet strand from my face. His fingers lingered against my cheek, warm despite the cool rain. Time seemed to slow, the space between us charged with unspoken possibilities. "I should go," I whispered, though I made no move to leave. James's eyes darkened. "Should you?" The question hung between us, heavy with implication. My heart hammered against my ribs, my body tense with anticipation and fear. "Yes," I finally said, stepping back, creating distance though every cell in my body protested. I drove home in silence, my thoughts louder than any music could ever be. The messages started innocently enough. Work questions that could have waited until morning. Links to articles relevant to our project. But soon they evolved into something more personal. "What made you choose copywriting?" he asked one night. I sat on my couch, wine glass in hand. Ryan's latest text about his delayed flight forgotten as I typed my response. I've always loved how the right words can change how people see things. It's like having a superpower. His reply came quickly. "You've certainly changed how I see things." The flutter in my stomach couldn't be ignored. I took another sip of wine, liquid courage warming my veins. How I dared to ask. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. "Before you, I'd forgotten what it feels like to want to know someone completely." I stared at the words, reading them over and over. The truth was I'd forgotten too. The thrill of discovery, of peeling back layers, of wanting to know someone's thoughts, dreams, the rhythm of their breathing when they sleep. "This is dangerous," I typed, then deleted. "I should go," I typed instead. "But you're still curious," came his reply. And he was right. That was the most dangerous part of all. Ryan returned from his trip, bringing the scent of airport terminals and distance with him. He kissed me on the cheek, his touch familiar yet somehow foreign, as if my skin had recalibrated its expectations in his absence. "Missed you," he said, the words automatic, empty. I searched his face for something. Any sign that he truly had missed me, that he saw me fading away from him. But his eyes were already moving past me, checking the mail on the counter, his mind elsewhere. "How was Phoenix?" I asked, following the script of our reunions. "Hot. Productive." He loosened his tie. "The Sanderson deal looks promising." The conversation continued along well-worn paths, neither of us deviating, neither of us risking anything real. Later, as we prepared for bed, I watched him move through his nightly routine, the methodical brushing of teeth, the setting of the alarm, the careful placement of his watch on the nightstand. When had this man, whom I'd once found so fascinating, become a stranger I could predict with painful accuracy? "Ryan," I said suddenly, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. He paused, looking at me with mild surprise, as if he'd forgotten I was capable of deviation from our script. "Are you happy?" The question felt enormous in our quiet bedroom. His forehead creased. "What kind of question is that?" "A simple one." My heart raced. "Are we happy?" Ryan sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Grace, it's been a long day. Can we not do this now?" And just like that, the moment passed, the question left hanging in the air between us, unanswered. As he turned off his bedside lamp and settled into sleep, I lay awake, my phone glowing softly beside me, James's last message still unanswered. "But you're still curious." Yes, I was. Curious about what happiness might feel like again. Curious about the man lying beside me and the stranger he'd become. Curious about the woman I was becoming, one capable of contemplating crossing lines I'd once believed unthinkable. The company retreat was set at a lakeside lodge 2 hours outside the city. 2 days of team-building exercises, strategy sessions, and forced socialization. Ryan was supportive of my attendance, Already planning a golf weekend with friends during my absence. It'll be good for you, he said, not looking up from his tablet. You've seemed distracted lately. I wondered if he'd noticed more than I gave him credit for, but his casual tone suggested otherwise. The distance between us felt both painful and freeing. James and I maintained a careful professional distance during the day's activities, but our eyes found each other across conference tables. Our hands brushed when passing documents, each contact brief but electric. That evening, after the scheduled dinner and presentations, most of the team gathered in the lodge's bar. The atmosphere was relaxed, colleagues becoming friends under the influence of accomplishment and alcohol. I nursed a glass of red wine, half listening to a conversation about digital marketing trends, while my awareness remained fixed on James across the room. As if sensing my thoughts, he glanced over, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made the room seem to fade around us. With a slight nod toward the terrace doors, he excused himself from his group. I waited a few minutes, my heart pounding in my chest, before following. The night air was cool against my flushed skin as I stepped onto the stone terrace. James stood at the railing, looking out over the dark lake, moonlight silvering the surface of the water. He didn't turn when I approached, but I saw his shoulders tense, aware of my presence. "Beautiful night," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Grace." The way he said my name, like it was something precious, something to be savored, sent a shiver through me. I moved to stand beside him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body but not touching. We stood in silence, watching the play of moonlight on water, the moment fragile and charged. "We shouldn't be out here," I said finally, though I made no move to leave. "Probably not." His voice was low, roughened with emotion. "But I've been thinking about being alone with you for weeks." I turned to look at him then, studying the strong line of his profile, the vulnerability in his expression. "This is more than attraction," he continued, finally meeting my gaze. "I need you to know that." "What is it, then?" I asked, needing to hear him say it, needing to understand what was happening between us. James reached for my hand, his touch sending waves of sensation up my arm. "It's recognition," he said, "of something I didn't know I was missing until I met you." His words echoed my own thoughts so perfectly it was startling. This connection, this understanding, it was what had been slowly draining from my marriage so gradually I hadn't noticed until it was nearly gone. "I'm married," I whispered, the words both a statement of fact and a question. "I know." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "And I would never ask you to." "Then what are we doing?" I interrupted, suddenly desperate for clarity, for boundaries, for something to hold onto as everything familiar seemed to shift beneath my feet. Instead of answering, James raised his free hand to my face, his fingers light against my cheek. The gesture was gentle, questioning, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. His lips, when they met mine, were warm, tentative at first, then more insistent as I responded. The kiss deepened, and I felt myself falling into it. Into him, the world narrowing to just this moment, just this connection. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, reality came crashing back. I stepped away, my fingers going instinctively to my lips. "I can't," I said, though my body hummed with contradiction. "This isn't." "I need to think." James nodded, his expression a mixture of desire and understanding. "I'll be here," he said simply. "Whatever you decide." I fled back to my room, locking the door behind me as if I could lock out my own treacherous heart. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection. My eyes were bright, my cheeks flushed, my lips slightly swollen from James's kiss. I looked alive. I looked like a woman I barely recognized. Sinking to the floor, I buried my face in my hands. The cool metal of my wedding ring pressed against my cheek, a tangible reminder of promises made, of a life built with Ryan. 15 years of history, of shared memories, of comfort and stability. Was I really willing to risk all of that for the promise of passion? For the intoxicating feeling of being truly seen again? I didn't know. And that uncertainty terrified me more than anything. The morning came with no clarity, just the dull throb of a headache and the weight of decisions yet unmade. I avoided James during breakfast, during the morning sessions, afraid of what I might see in his eyes, afraid of what he might see in mine. But as the day progressed, I found my gaze drawn to him again and again. The confident way he spoke during presentations, the kindness he showed to junior team members, the way his presence seemed to fill any room he entered. This wasn't just physical attraction. It was deeper, more dangerous. During the afternoon break, my phone vibrated with a text from Ryan. Asterisk, how's the retreat? Boring you to tears yet? Asterisk. The casual message, devoid of any real curiosity about my experience, crystallized something in my mind. Ryan and I had stopped asking real questions long ago. We'd stopped being interested in each other's answers. We'd stopped growing together. Was that reason enough to break vows? To hurt someone who, despite our distance, I still cared for deeply? I had no answer. But I knew I couldn't continue in this limbo. This half-life of unspoken desires and mounting regrets. That evening, as the retreat wound down and colleagues began dispersing to their rooms, I found myself walking the path to the small dock extending into the lake. The night was clear, stars reflected in the still water, creating the illusion of infinity above and below. I heard footsteps on the wooden planks and knew without turning that it was James. He stopped beside me, not touching, respecting the invisible boundary I'd established that morning. I was married once, he said after a long silence. 8 years. It ended 3 years ago. I glanced at him, surprised by the revelation. I didn't know. No reason you would. His eyes remained fixed on the horizon. We grew apart so gradually that by the end, we were strangers sharing a house. The divorce was almost a relief. The parallels to my own situation weren't lost on me. Why are you telling me this? James turned to face me then, his expression serious. Because I've been where you are. Trapped between loyalty to what was and longing for what could be. And what happened? I asked, though I feared I knew the answer. I met someone. I crossed a line I promised never to cross. His voice was quiet, tinged with old regret. The affair ended my marriage, but the truth is my marriage was already over. I just hadn't admitted it yet. I absorbed his words, searching for judgment in his tone and finding none. Only honesty, painful and bare. I don't want to be the reason your marriage ends, Grace, he continued. That's not what this is about for me. What is it about, then? I asked, echoing our conversation from the night before. James's gaze was steady, unflinching. It's about connection. The kind that makes you feel alive again. The kind that makes you question everything you thought you knew about yourself. His words resonated in my chest, naming the nameless feeling that had been growing since we first began working together. I don't know what to do, I admitted, my voice breaking slightly. You don't have to decide anything tonight. He reached for my hand, his touch warm against the cool night air. But whatever you choose, make sure it's because it's what you truly want, not what you think you should want. We stood there hand in hand under the stars, the weight of possibility and consequence hanging between us. When he finally leaned in, his lips found mine with a gentleness that broke my heart. The kiss was tender, questioning, filled with promise and restraint. As we drew apart, I felt tears on my cheeks, though I hadn't realized I was crying. I should go, I whispered, though everything in me wanted to stay. James nodded, releasing my hand. I know. I walked away, each step a conscious choice, my mind racing with possibilities, with fears, with desires I could no longer ignore. The drive home the next day was a journey through emotional landscapes more than physical ones. I rehearsed conversations with Ryan in my head, scenarios playing out like alternate realities. In one, I confessed everything and watched our marriage crumble. In another, I recommitted myself to him, determined to rediscover what we'd lost. In yet another, I said nothing but lived with the weight of secrets between us. None felt right. All felt inevitable. When I arrived home, Ryan was watching football, beer in hand, his weekend with friends apparently over early. He greeted me with casual warmth, asking about the retreat with perfunctory interest. I answered mechanically, unpacking my bag, sorting laundry, falling into domestic patterns that suddenly felt like a performance. That night, as we prepared for bed, I watched him, really watched him, for the first time in months. The familiar lines of his face, the gray threading through his dark hair, the comfortable way he moved through our shared space. This man who had been my partner for 15 years, who knew my history, my family, the architecture of the life we'd built together. "Ryan," I said, my heart pounding. "We need to talk." He looked up, surprise and wariness crossing his features. "That sounds serious." "It is." I sat on the edge of our bed, hands clasped tightly in my lap. "I'm not happy. I haven't been for a while." The words hung in the air between us, impossible to take back. Ryan's expression shifted from surprise to confusion to a guarded stillness. "What are you saying exactly?" "I'm saying we've lost something. Connection. Curiosity. I don't know when it happened, but we stopped seeing each other. Really seeing each other." He sat beside me, leaving space between us, his posture defensive. "Is this about someone else?" The directness of the question startled me. I'd expected denial, perhaps anger, but not this quiet perception. "It's about us," I said carefully. "But, yes, there are feelings involved." "Nothing's happened," I added quickly, the lie bitter on my tongue. "But the fact that it could, that I could even consider it, it means something's wrong. With us." Ryan was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled, measured. "Who is he? Does it matter?" "It matters to me." I took a deep breath. "James." From my department, recognition flickered in his eyes. "The rock climber." "From the Christmas party." I nodded, waiting for the explosion, the accusations. Instead, Ryan laughed, a short, hollow sound devoid of humor. "I should have seen it," he said. "The late nights. The way you've been checking your phone. I just thought." He trailed off, shaking his head. "You thought what?" "I thought you were finally happy again. Engaged with your work, with life." He looked at me directly. I didn't realize it wasn't about the job at all. The absence of anger in his voice was somehow worse than rage would have been. "Ryan, have you slept with him?" The question was blunt, painful in its directness. "No," I answered truthfully. "But emotionally, I've already crossed a line." Ryan nodded slowly, absorbing this. "Do you want out? Is that what this conversation is? You asking for a divorce?" "I don't know what I want," I admitted. "I just know we can't continue like this. Pretending everything's fine when we're both just going through the motions. So what are you suggesting?" I'd been asking myself the same question for days. "Time. Space to figure things out. Maybe counseling if you're willing. And James." His voice hardened slightly at the name. "I don't know," I said again, the words inadequate but honest. "I need to step back from both of you. I need to understand what I'm feeling, what I really want." Ryan stood, pacing the room, his movements tense. 15 years, Grace. 15 years, and you're telling me you need space because some guy at work makes you feel special. The anger I'd been expecting finally surfaced, his words sharp with hurt. "It's not about him making me feel special," I protested, though there was truth in his accusation. "It's about what his attention revealed. That you and I have been drifting apart for years. Can you honestly tell me you're happy with how things are between us?" The question hung in the air, challenging, unavoidable. Ryan stopped pacing, his shoulders slumping. "No," he admitted quietly. "I'm not happy either. But I didn't go looking for happiness with someone else." The rebuke stung, all the more painful for its accuracy. "I didn't go looking for this," I said. "It just happened. Things like this don't just happen, Grace. You made choices. Maybe not to sleep with him, but to open that door, to step through it emotionally." He was right, and we both knew it. I'd made countless small decisions that led to this moment. From lingering glances to late-night messages to walks under the stars. Each one a choice, each one a step away from my marriage and towards something forbidden. I'm sorry, I whispered, the words wholly inadequate. Yeah. Ryan's voice was tired, defeated. Me too. He gathered a pillow and blanket from the closet. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. We can talk more tomorrow when we're both clearer. As he reached the bedroom door, he paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Whatever you decide, Grace, make sure it's what you really want. Not just what feels good in the moment. The echo of James's words from the previous night wasn't lost on me. As the door closed behind Ryan, I lay back on our bed, staring at the ceiling, tears sliding silently into my hair. What did I want? The safety and history of my marriage? The passion and connection I'd found with James? Or something else entirely? The courage to stand alone and rediscover who I was beyond both relationships? I had no answer. Only questions, spinning in endless circles as the night deepened around me. Morning came with no revelations, only the heavy weight of decisions yet unmade. Ryan and I moved around each other carefully, the tension between us thick but not explosive. We agreed to talk again that evening, after work, a conversation I both dreaded and knew was necessary. At the office, I avoided James, sending an email requesting a few days' space to sort through personal matters. His reply was immediate and understanding. *, take all the time you need. I'm here when you're ready to talk. *. The day passed in a blur of meetings and deadlines, my mind only half present. By late afternoon, I found myself alone in the conference room where James and I had spent so many hours together. The space felt charged with memory, with possibility, with regret. My phone vibrated with a text from Ryan. * coming home early. We should talk. *. The simple message sent a wave of anxiety through me. Whatever happened next would change everything: my marriage, my relationship with James, my understanding of myself. There was no path forward that didn't involve loss, pain, transformation. As I gathered my things to leave, my gaze fell on a photo on my desk. Ryan and me on our 10th anniversary trip to Hawaii. Both of us smiling against a backdrop of ocean and sky. We looked happy, connected, in love. Had it been real? Or were we already performing happiness, going through motions we no longer felt? The truth, I realized, was somewhere in between. The love had been real. The connection had been real. But somewhere along the way, we'd stopped nurturing both, stopped seeing each other, stopped growing together. Could that be repaired? Did I want to repair it? The drive home was a journey through emotional landscapes as much as physical ones. I thought of James, his understanding, his passion, the way he made me feel alive again. I thought of Ryan, our history, the life we'd built, the commitment we'd made to each other. And I thought of myself, the woman I'd been, the woman I was becoming, the woman I wanted to be. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I knew what I needed to do. Not what was easiest or what hurt least, but what was right, for all of us. Ryan was waiting in the living room, a glass of scotch in hand, his expression guarded but not hostile. "I've been thinking all day," he said as I sat across from him. "About us. About where we went wrong." I nodded, letting him continue. "We stopped talking. Really talking." He looked down at his glass. Somewhere between promotions and routines and just life, we became roommates instead of partners. And I let it happen. We both did. His words echoed my own thoughts so closely it was startling. "Yes," I agreed softly. "We did. The thing is, Grace," he continued, meeting my eyes directly, "I don't want to lose you. But I don't want to keep you if you don't want to be kept. That's not fair to either of us." The honesty in his voice, the vulnerability, touched something deep within me. This was the man I'd fallen in love with, thoughtful, direct, brave in his emotions. "I don't know if what you feel for this James guy is real or if it's just a symptom of what's been missing between us," Ryan said. "But I know what I feel for you is real. It's gotten buried under years of taking each other for granted, but it's still there. At least for me." I felt tears welling in my eyes. "It's still there for me too," I admitted. "But Ryan, we can't go back to how things were. Even before James, we were drifting. You know that." He nodded slowly. Then we go forward. We rebuild. Different, maybe better. He set his glass down, leaning forward. I'm willing to try if you are. Counseling. Date nights. Whatever it takes to find each other again. His words hung in the air between us, an invitation, a challenge, a promise. And James? I asked quietly. Ryan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. That's your decision. But you can't rebuild with me while you're exploring possibilities with him. That's not how this works. He was right, of course. The in-between space I'd been occupying wasn't sustainable. It wasn't fair to any of us. I need to think, I said finally. Really think, not just react. Ryan nodded, understanding in his eyes. Take the weekend. Go to your sister's place if you need space. But Grace, his voice softened. Remember what we had, what we could have again. Before you decide it's not worth fighting for. As he left the room, I sat in silence, the weight of choice heavy on my shoulders. What did I want? What did I need? What was I willing to risk, to lose, to gain? The answers weren't simple, weren't clean. But they were mine to find. The weekend at my sister's place provided the distance I needed. From Ryan, from James, from the emotional whirlwind that had consumed me. In the quiet of her guest room, I confronted truths I'd been avoiding. My marriage had been slowly dying long before James entered the picture. But was it dead or merely dormant? Could Ryan and I find our way back to each other, or would we be clinging to something better laid to rest? And James, was what I felt for him real or simply a reaction to the emptiness in my marriage? Was he the answer or just an escape? By Sunday evening, as I drove home, I'd reached no perfect resolution. But I'd found clarity about one thing. I couldn't continue in limbo. One foot in my marriage and one reaching toward something new. The time for decisions had come. Ryan was reading in the living room when I arrived, his face carefully neutral as I set down my bag. I've been thinking, I began, sitting across from him. Me too, he said, closing his book. A lot. Ryan, let me go first, he interrupted gently. Please. I nodded, hands clasped tightly in my lap. I've spent this weekend looking at myself, at us really honestly. His voice was steady, measured. And I realized something important. I've been just as absent from this marriage as you have. Different ways maybe, but absent nonetheless. The admission surprised me. I'd expected defensiveness, perhaps accusation, not this calm self-reflection. The truth is, he continued, I've been coasting. Work became my focus, my passion, while you became comfortable, safe. I stopped seeing you as someone to discover and started seeing you as someone I already knew. His words struck a chord so deep it almost hurt. Yes, I whispered. That's exactly it. For both of us. So here's what I'm proposing, Ryan said, leaning forward. Not a return to what was. Something new. A reset. We start dating again, learning each other again. Counseling, yes, but also adventure. Curiosity. His eyes held mine. I want to discover you again, Grace. If you'll let me. The sincerity in his voice moved me deeply. This wasn't the Ryan I'd grown accustomed to, detached, predictable, safe. This was the man who had once pursued me with passion and determination, who had seen in me something worth fighting for. What about trust? I asked quietly. After James. Ryan's expression tightened briefly, but his voice remained calm. Trust can be rebuilt. If both people wanted enough. And do you? Wanted enough. Yes. No hesitation, no doubt. I do. I took a deep breath, the weight of decision heavy on my shoulders. I need to be honest with you about something first. Ryan tensed visibly, preparing himself. At the retreat, James and we kissed. The admission fell between us like a stone. Twice. Nothing more than that, but you deserve to know. I watched pain flash across his features, followed by resignation, then determination. Thank you for telling me, he said finally. It doesn't change my offer. But it does mean we have more work to do. The grace in his response brought tears to my eyes. Not forgiveness exactly, it was too soon for that, but a willingness to move forward despite the hurt. It showed a strength of character I'd somehow forgotten he possessed. There's one more thing, I said, gathering my courage. Tomorrow, I need to talk to James. In person. To end things cleanly. I owe him that much. Ryan nodded, though I could see it cost him. I understand. The conversation that followed lasted hours. Painful at times, healing at others. We talked about what we'd lost, what we wanted to find again. The changes we needed to make individually and together. There were tears, confessions, moments of unexpected laughter. By the time we fell silent, exhausted but somehow lighter, something had shifted between us. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. So, Ryan said finally, what happens now? I reached for his hand, the gesture both familiar and newly significant. Now we try, I said simply. Really try. James was waiting for me in the coffee shop across from our office, his expression brightening when he saw me, then sobering as he read something in my face. You've made a decision, he said as I sat across from him. I nodded, grateful for his directness. I'm going to try to save my marriage. He was quiet for a moment, disappointment evident in the set of his shoulders, though his voice remained steady. I can't say I'm not disappointed, but I respect your choice. What happened between us was real, I said softly. You made me feel alive again, seen again. I'll always be grateful for that. But not enough to choose me, he finished, no bitterness in his tone, just resignation. It's not about choosing between you and Ryan, I explained, wanting him to understand. It's about choosing the path that's right for me. Right now, that means honoring my commitment, seeing if what's broken can be repaired. James nodded slowly. And if it can't? The question hung between us, heavy with implication. Then that's a different conversation for a different time, I said carefully. But I need to try, James. Really try, without looking over my shoulder or keeping one foot out the door. He reached across the table, briefly touching my hand. I understand. More than you might think. A sad smile crossed his features. Just be sure this is what you want, not what you think you should want. I am, I said, and was surprised to find it was true. Whatever happened next, this decision felt right. Not easy, not painless, but right. We said goodbye with a promise to maintain professional distance at work. As I watched him walk away, I felt a complicated mix of loss and relief. What might have been with James would always exist in some parallel universe of possibility, but the path ahead was clear now. The months that followed were neither simple nor smooth. Ryan and I began the slow, sometimes painful work of rediscovering each other. There were therapy sessions that left us raw, date nights that felt awkward, moments when the ghost of my betrayal rose between us. But there were other moments too. Unexpected laughter over dinner, conversations that stretched into the night, touches that held new meaning. We learned to be curious about each other again, to ask questions instead of assuming answers. Tell me something I don't know about you. Became our ritual. A nightly exchange that revealed how much we still had to learn, even after 15 years. I always wanted to learn to play the cello, Ryan confessed one night, surprising me. I sometimes dream of moving to a small town and opening a bookstore. I admitted another evening. Small revelations that built bridges between who we had been and who we were becoming. Work remained complicated. James and I maintained professional distance, our interactions cordial but brief. I saw the questions in his eyes sometimes, the wondering about what might have been. But as weeks passed, those moments grew less frequent, less intense. 6 months after that fateful company retreat, Ryan and I sat on our back deck, watching the sunset. His hand found mine, our fingers intertwining with familiar ease. Are you happy? He asked, echoing the question I'd posed that night. Everything changed. I considered it seriously, looking inward for the truth. I'm getting there, I answered honestly. There are still hard days. But yes, I think I am. Are you? Ryan squeezed my hand. Yes, he said simply. Different than before, maybe. Not easier, but deeper. I understood exactly what he meant. What we were building wasn't the comfortable, predictable relationship we'd fallen into over the years. It was something new, more deliberate, more mindful, requiring work and attention and constant choice. I'm glad I stayed, I said softly. Thank you for fighting for us. Thank you for being worth fighting for, he replied. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, I leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him beside me. The curiosity that had nearly destroyed us had also, ironically, been our salvation, teaching us to see each other anew, to never again take for granted the person we'd chosen. The weight of what might have been would always be there, a shadow in the corners of my mind. But lighter now, less a regret than a reminder of how easily what matters can slip away when left untended. What I'd learned, what we'd both learned, was that the real danger isn't in curiosity itself. It's in forgetting to be curious about the person right beside you in the comfortable illusion of knowing someone completely. In the end, it was that lesson, painful as it was to learn, that saved us. That night, as Ryan and I made love with a tenderness that held new depths of meaning, I understood the truest answer to the question that had started it all. It wasn't about what I was missing or what someone else might offer. It was about the courage to ask for what I needed, the wisdom to recognize what I had, and the strength to choose again every day the commitment I'd made to this man, this life, this self I was still discovering. That was the weight of curiosity. Not just what it reveals about what we don't have, but what it teaches us about what we've forgotten to see in what we do.